the first episode of my podcast, where I give tips, tricks, and insider opinions and takes on the outdoor industry. Have you ever been curious about which national parks are worth visiting in California? Well, look no further. Here are 5 of the most spectacular national parks in the Golden State. Starting with number 5 in the northeast corner of the state is Lassen National Park. Lassen is probably the best kept secret on this list, and for good reason. It's located in the northeastern corner of the state and is nestled in the southern Cascade Range between the towns of Redding and Susanville. Its scenery is a sight to see, as the landscape is basically untouched by humans apart from informative hiking trails and campgrounds. There's also quite the interesting geography at Lassen, as it is one of the only places in the world where you can find all 4 volcano types. Having been to this park myself, the overall feel is a lot more relaxed and laid back to other parks in California. On a simple day hike, you would be to see another hiker on the trail. It's pretty relaxed and chill, you know? Here are a couple areas I would recommend visiting within the park. The first place I recommend going to is the lava plateau in the eastern part of the park. The landscape is dotted with small cinder cones. The largest formation, aptly named Cinder Cone, is located near the Painted Dunes on the east edge of the plateau. Continuing through the park, I recommend you stop at Mill Creek Falls, a short 4-mile round-trip hike from the Mud Pots and Visitor Center. If you have extra time, check out the Drake's Bad Resort with its hot springs, as well as Boiling Springs Lake, not far from the creek. Next, for number 4 on this list, we have Kings Canyon National Park. Located just 5.5 hours from Los Angeles and 4 hours from San Francisco, it's definitely one of the more accessible parks on this list. Nestled on the western slope of the Sierra Nevadas near Fresno, Kings Canyon is a rugged, glacial-carved valley that is more than a mile deep in some places. This park is very quiet usually, as it is very rural, so it's definitely worth the trip for someone looking for peace and quiet. Having traveled to this park myself as well, I have a couple places that are worth exploring inside the park. The first is Boyden Cavern, located about an hour from the visitor center. It's not far of a drive, but is definitely worth the trip, and on the way to the second place I recommend seeing. With the large stalactites and stalagmites within the caverns, it makes for a cool opportunity to explore this natural wonder. The second place I would suggest visiting is Canawires, which is where the highway makes a large horseshoe bend and returns in the other direction. The scenery is purely breathtaking, with jagged high alpine peaks and many small creeks and rivers that scatter the area. Overall, I feel like Kings Canyon is a park you should visit if you're already in the area, though I wouldn't personally visit the park on its own because it's a little out of the way from big towns and lodges. At number 3, we have Sequoia National Park, and it is one of the most visited parks on this list. Located just south of Kings Canyon, Sequoia is on the southern edge of the Sierra Nevada. It's a 4.5-hour drive from Los Angeles and a 5.5-hour drive from San Francisco. With very similar geography to Kings Canyon, there's not much to elaborate on but the towering Sequoia redwoods, which are the main attraction in the park, and the largest, literally. The star of the show at Sequoia is the General Sherman tree, which is the biggest tree on Earth by volume. It stands at a whopping 275 feet, towering above the forest floor. This park is definitely worth coming to if you're looking to see redwoods and picturesque high alpine peaks. For number 2, we have Death Valley National Park. Surrounded by deserts, Death Valley is the most rural park on this list. It's 4.5 hours from Los Angeles and 8.5 hours from San Francisco. A very long drive comparable to the other parks. Both routes are accessible year-round, though. Death Valley is home to the lowest point in North America. At Badwater Basin, the elevation is 286 feet below sea level. It's less than 100 miles from the highest point in the lower 48 states as well, which is Mount Whitney and stands at 14,505 feet above sea level, just outside of the park. Death Valley is also where the highest temperature on Earth has been recorded, at 134 degrees Fahrenheit. The most visited attraction at the park is the dunes at Stovepipe Wells. This is a great park to visit during the winter when temperatures are lower, as the average temperature during the summer is 115 degrees. This sometimes isn't taken into consideration, and many individuals get stranded in the extreme heat on multiple occasions throughout the summer. One of the coolest areas to explore, in my opinion, is Star Wars Canyon, which is on the west edge of the park and is where many military airplanes do demonstrations as they rip through the canyon. This is also where multiple movies have been filmed, including Independence Day. Altogether, the park is worth the drive for sure, but its desolation means that preparing for the worst is necessary. Not surprisingly, number 1 on this list is Yosemite National Park. Nestled between the Central Valley and the Great Basin, Yosemite is strategically located 5 hours from Los Angeles and 3.5 hours from San Francisco. Yosemite is the most visited national park in California, But whether you're visiting Tuolumne Meadows, Half Dome, El Capitan, or Tenaya Lake, there's something for everyone. Backpacking through the park is very popular among travelers as well. The most common route I've seen covers 30 miles from the east end of the park to the Yosemite Valley. Many people like to stop and hike the popular Half Dome, as it is very beautiful and stuff. Yeah. Most people enter from the west side of the park, and the park can get very crowded, especially on weekends and holidays. The east gate of the park closes during the winter due to large amounts of snow, so don't try to enter on that side. Yosemite is definitely one of the most environmentally diverse parks in California, with jagged rock formations, high alpine meadows, and lush forests. It's definitely worth going to, and is one that I'd most recommend out of the ones on the list. Thank you for listening. Join me next week for our next episode on the most effective ways to minimize your environmental impact in nature. And this was a podcast by Evan Hilton.